The Twins are so far 2-0 on their 10-game stretch against American League Central opponents. One of those wins was pretty, the other not so much. But what do we expect from the rest of the weekend and the rest of this stretch? Do we dare say Max Kepler is back? All this and much more on this edition of Locked On Twins. So sit back, buckle up, and get comfortable because Locked On Twins starts now.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say? Thanks for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, in addition to, of course, on YouTube. And of course, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. First and foremost, please feel free to be active in the comments on YouTube. We'd love to hang out and chop it up with you, ask questions, answer questions, have conversations, and just get a feel for the vibe of the fans of this club. Secondly, if you have questions that you would like to ask on the program in the bullpen segment, the second segment of every single day's show, send them to me on Twitter at LockedOnMin, at Brandon_WARNE, DMs, whatever. However you can get them to me, we're happy to answer them. Also, and finally, don't forget to check out Locked On Twins' breathless pre- and post-game minutes. The post-game minutes are probably going to be a little bit more consistent as we record those right after a game ends. Pre-game, we'll do the lineups and that sort of thing if people are interested. So make sure to check out for those on YouTube under the shorts column on there. Let's talk about Game Time quick before we get started. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. You can download the Game Time app or go to gametime.co, not .com, and create an account. Use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, and you get $20 off your first purchase. Those last-minute tickets to sports, comedy shows, whatever, all kinds of different venues, all kinds of different shows. You get the lowest price guaranteed. Now, with that said, pretty much the only ticket left in town is your Minnesota Twins. Fortunately, they are home here for the next couple days, and then when they come back, we'll welcome them home with the Padres and Dodgers. Kind of a fun little difference there. But if you want to go to those games, again, go to the Game Time app or gametime.co and create an account, Locked On MLB, and you get $20 off that first order. Also, don't miss today's game. It's Saturday, 1:10 p.m. Bailey Ober against Brad Keller. Twins brought up Ober to replace Kenta Maeda, who's going on the injured list with a right tricep strain. Big, tall righty. Looking forward to getting another extended look at him. And Keller is basically just a vanilla righty, decent stuff, nothing too special. They've been looking for him to take a jump or a leap for a few years now. Tons of walks this year. So hopefully the Twins can be patient. You can be patient and listen to every single pitch on the Twins hometown broadcast with Corey and Danny on Sirius XM. Just download this SXM app and search Twins. So the Twins win big on Thursday, 7-1. Got a little dicey on Friday, 8-6. But they've won 5 of 6. Since losing 6 of 7, which is good to see because good teams are still going to have those dicey stretches, and you have to show that you can come out of them. You don't have to have perfect pitching. You don't have to have perfect hitting. And for the most part this season, the Twins have, they've had very good of both of those. Certainly the pitching has been ahead of the hitting, as the old adage goes for early in the season. But I think the fact that the struggles were against the Red Sox and Nationals, two teams that are, not the best teams the Twins are going to play this year. Let's just be candid about that. But that they picked it up against the Yankees shows a sign that this team is a little different than in years before, which I think is good, which I think is really good. But at the same time, too, what we're seeing is offensive rankings creeping up. I think that is something maybe we shouldn't sleep on. If we go look at our friends at Roster Resource, Twins pitching, starting pitcher still 6th in ERA, 1st in WHIP, 2nd in walks per 9, 2nd in Ks per 9, 3rd in hits per 9. Relievers anywhere from 8th to 12th in a lot of numbers. So solid pitching. But the offense, and I'm going to say these offensive numbers, and they might not immediately make your socks roll up and down. 21st in average, 22nd in on-base percentage, 16th in OPS, thanks to being 5th in home runs, which has really crept up lately. 11th in runs, and of course 30th in stolen bases, because basically only Michael A. Taylor is allowed to steal bases at this point, although they did steal third base last night, which was a rare occurrence. I think Billy Hamilton did it once for the Twins last year, but not really a typical occurrence. But for the Twins to be even inching up outside of the lower 20s for a lot of these numbers is a big leap. It's a significant leap to how shaky this offense has been at times this season, where the starting pitching did carry them. Now, when you look at this team as a whole, so you're 16th in OPS, 6th in starting pitcher ERA, 14th in relief pitcher ERA. To me, that is a team that can win a lot of ball games. You know, you don't have to be number 5 on all 3. You don't have to be the best of the best of the best. And especially that's doubly true with the way the American League Central has laid out this season. And we'll talk about that too the further we get into today's program. But again, you have to be enthused about how this offense has picked it up of late. And I will have some specific numbers regarding that, especially with Max Kepler, as far as that has gone. Alex Kirilloff decision time is coming. And the tough thing is he's not playing all day, every day, or all game, every game. He's been doing some more playing back-to-back games and that sort of thing, which is obviously a step in the right direction. And to say that he has absolutely killed it at St. Paul would be an understatement, because his slash right now, 32 plate appearances, he's got 9 hits, 346 average, 469 on base, 731 slugging. So what we mean by decision time on his rehab is he can just as easily stay at St. Paul. He just has to be reinstated to the active roster, as opposed to on a rehab stint, which is a roster exemption for that team. So obviously the way he's playing, he deserves to be up with the Twins. You know, the question is, if you bring him up here, how much time can you find for him and where? Joey Gallo's been playing first base, but he could also play left, center, right. If Trevor Larnach continues to struggle, maybe he gets sent back. For Kirilloff, they're definitely going to take baby steps and be very careful with Kirilloff in this instance. But at this point, outside of him maybe only playing 2 of every 3 games, it's hard to see anything on the stat sheet that says he's not ready to help this team. Now, again, the Twins are going to know better than you or I or anyone else, but he is probably a better offensive option for this team than Trevor Larnach right now, which, seems strange to say, because Larnach has been hitting cleanup for a long time. Also, too, I think I'd flip-flop Joey Gallo and Larnach at this point in the lineup against righties, which they're facing a lot of righties coming up here. So you can't help but be impressed by Joey Gallo to this point in the season. And we'll have almost an entire segment on him in the 7th inning stretch today. But he's been a real revelation. So if Kirilloff came up, though, I mean, you're probably sending out. I mean, in theory, could you send out Willie Castro? I don't think that's an unreasonable proposition, especially considering how little Nick Gordon is playing at this point. With that said, I don't know how eager the Twins are to send down another right-handed bat, or a bat who can hit right-handed. He's a switch hitter. So it's unclear to me if that would be an option. But if you send out Castro, are you suddenly pretty thin on infield help? And then also, too, what do you do when Kyle Farmer comes back? And now that could be the move for Larnach, or you send Larnach out for Kirilloff and then send out Castro for Farmer. You know, there's some fluidity there, but you also have to be mindful of the fact that the guys at the back of the bench right now are not playing all that much. After seeing a lot of Donovan Solano early, we haven't seen quite as much of late. Nick Gordon, pretty much a non-factor at this point. He started 1 of the last 6 games. Solano has been 3 of the last 6 games. Jeffers 2 of the last 6. Castro 3 of the last 6. So they're not leaning that heavily on the bench. So you could maneuver a little bit, and keep in mind too, it's St. Paul, it's close. If they're on the road, it's a little different, but I think I would bring him back, but at the same time, it's not egregious if they don't. Let's give some love to Max Kepler too. People talk about the idea that he wasn't going to help this team coming back. And statistically speaking, that probably has merit. It's been 3 seasons since he's been a huge asset for this offense. And that season was 2019, where basically they were using bouncy balls as baseballs. But let's give Kepler some love here. He's made 45 plate appearances since he's come back. He came back on April 15th on the road against the Yankees and started off with back-to-back 0-fers, 0 for 3, 0 for 3. And then since he's come back, he's hit 282, 333, 538. That's an 872 OPS. And if we get rid of those 0-fers, again, this is not just to say, oh, those games don't count, but since he's started really picking it up, he's got a 1,021 OPS over the last 10 games. So you got a couple homers, bookending that. You had the homer against the Red Sox, and then the leadoff first pitch home run against the Royals on Friday. But in general, he's hit in looks like 7 of those 10 games, 3 multi-hit games, 6 extra base hits overall. He's driven in 7 runs, striking out 9 times in 39 plate appearances, which is a perfectly respectable rate. He's really picked it up, and I think you got to give him his flowers. And I also think, too, it was foolish to think trading him would have been one thing, but the idea that they were going to dump him as a DFA, I can't believe we ever gave it that much credence, but here we are. Ober for Maeda has already happened. That was announced this morning, so Bailey will start Saturday's game against the Royals. Apologize for my Joan Duran mistake on Twitter. I mentioned that he had worked on Thursday, and that probably would render him unavailable for Friday as that game unraveled a bit. But Joan Duran had an immigration meeting and was not with the team. So that's a mea culpa on my behalf. I usually watch the games without sound on, so that was my mistake. A couple quick things, too, before we move on to our first break. Louie Varland is possibly an option to come up and cover for Tyler Mahle, depending on if Mahle can make his next start. It sounded as though the Twins were enthusiastic about that initially, but these things are subject to change without a doubt. Varland has been absolutely terrific with St. Paul, his hometown Saints, so far this year. 4.2 ERA, obviously you look at that and you probably kind of wonder, but 25 strikeouts against just 4 walks in 15 innings. And if you look at it, the way this had worked in recent years, he'd be the initial guy. He'd be the guy who was the first option. And if he floundered, they'd have to go even deeper into their system. So again, this speaks to the depth of this team. Let's do this. Let's pause. I got a couple more things to get to, but I don't want to miss our first round of sponsors here. So again, we're going to talk about Game Time, gametime.co, not .com, .co. So make sure you remember that. Or download the app. And if you were ever stressed about buying tickets, trying to find them in the last minute, that sort of thing, especially now with the Twins playing better than I think people had expected, and the weather creeping up a little warmer. I think we might get to 60-something degrees today. A couple of afternoon games, so you can use your afternoon to go and still have your evenings free. So you can get out to the ballpark here the next couple days. Use Game Time. If you use the app and you use the code, let me make sure I get the right code here. Locked On MLB, $20 off your first purchase. So you can snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. It's gametime.co or the Game Time app on your Android and or iPhone, Apple phone, whatever phone you use, you should be able to find the Game Time app. Terms apply. But again, create an account and redeem the code Locked On MLB and get $20 off. That's the Game Time app. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Now, I wanted to touch on a couple more things here before we go into the bullpen. We are, of course, in the opener. That's the first segment. So we're jumping into the bullpen quick here. But something to keep an eye on. I know Rocco got asked about this before yesterday's game because they had an entire segment dedicated to it during the rain delay before the Twins announced a start time. But starting pitcher injuries have been, and pitcher injuries league-wide have been up. And I think, too, we're going to want to monitor how Twins use starting pitchers. Last year is last year. If you were upset the Twins took Chris Archer out after 4 innings, we're not really going to talk about that. If you're gonna be upset that Dylan Bundy got taken out of the game early, we're not going to talk about that. But right now, the Twins are 4th in innings pitched per start, obviously hurt by a couple of short Kenta Maeda starts, and 20th in pitches per start. Now, again, that is going to be a Maeda thing, but also this pitching staff has been more efficient. So we'll keep an eye on that. Also, too, just let's look at the rest of this division for just a split second. The Twins are the only team over 500 at 16-11. Guardians 13-13, 2.5 back. Tigers 5.5 back at 9-15, which to me is still surprising that they're even that good. White Sox an incredibly bad 7-20, and the Royals 6-21. Thanks, of course, to your Twins beating them the last 2 games in a row. The Royals are an unthinkable 1-12 at home right now. Every team has a -10 or worse run differential outside of the Twins at +23. And in their last 10, the White Sox are a stunning 1-9 with 9 straight losses. Royals are 2-8. You will not find a worse team over the last 10 than the White Sox at 1-9. So Twins about to head to Chicago, where the White Sox are 3-8. They'll go in and face Cleveland, where they are 4-8. So who knows? Again, a chance for the Twins to really flex some muscle in the division, especially too with the Guardians shorthanded. Tristan McKenzie still not back. Probably won't be for a while. So again, we're talking about this 10-game stretch. It would be really nice for the Twins to go 7-3, 6-4 would be okay. 7-3, 8-2 would be absolutely fantastic. But again, we'll just keep an eye on it. All right. So thank you for making us to your first listen every day. If you're an everydayer, be sure to check back over the weekend for the pre and post game breathless minutes. Otherwise, Monday, we will have a full wrap of the Royals series, and we're going to be doing a crossover episode with Locked On White Sox to get prepared for that set. Monday is an off day, too, so we'll have a little off-day fodder. I'm also working on a potential guest in the near future who has both White Sox and Twins ties, so stay tuned for that. And don't forget, Twins play the Royals this afternoon, 1:10 p.m. Ober against Keller. It's going to be fun to see more of Bailey Ober. It looks like they're pushing him a little further in starts rather than 75 pitches, 85, 90. He looks good. He also, to me, looks like former Locked On Twins host Nash Walker grew a beard and kind of like a mullet. So that's fun. But again, you can catch every single pitch of the Twins hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search for Twins and you can listen to the hometown call with Danny and Corey. So we're deep into the bullpen segment, is the second segment of every single day. And I want to listen to you. I want to hear what you have to say. And so we got some comments here. Devlin, good friend Devlin Clark, who's got a very fun podcast, just had Marty Cordova on recently. So if you are a fan of a certain age, as I am, you may enjoy that. He wants to know if Max Kepler is back. He gives Pablo a pass on his start on Friday due to the field conditions and the delay. But is Max Kepler back? I think the answer is maybe. Again, that stretch, excuse me, I'm sorry about that, is I think the stretch is encouraging. It's only 10, 12 games where he's been quote unquote back. But the Twins are going to give him opportunity. And I think the idea that people thought they would just dump him was foolish for a few reasons. He still defensively impacts the game. Again, in right field, not as important as, say, up the middle. But this is also a guy in his 15th season in this organization. And that may not matter a pile of beans to you or me, but teams care about that sort of thing, that kind of loyalty, that kind of whatever. And so they're not just going to flush that just to DFA a guy who's making, decent but not crazy money. And if the offers weren't there this offseason, they weren't just going to give him away. I think trading him is different. you can show loyalty to a guy while trading him if you make a good baseball trade. If you just dump him to get your salary out of there, that's a little different. It's a little more cold. Again, though, that's the name of the game. It's balance sheets and roster spots and all that stuff. But to just unceremoniously dump him this early in the season, regardless of the fact that he's come back like this, would probably be a pretty short-sighted move. So yeah, no, I think I would hesitate to say he's back because we don't even really know how legit that 2019 season was. But if he can be, a decent offensive right fielder who makes all the plays in right, that's good enough for now. I mean, it might be his final season with the Twins. There's no question about that, especially with, as we said, Alex Kirilloff knocking on the doorstep. But, I think to this point, he's as back as he could be to this point in the season. Our friend Josh Nelson wants to know, when do the Twins lose 19 of their next 26 games? And the reason why I say that is because he's a White Sox fan. He goes by SoxMachine_Josh. And yeah, you can't help but feel for White Sox fans just because there's different ways to build a team. And it seems strange that a Chicago team would be considered a similar market to Minneapolis. But that's basically how it's gone. And their path to contention, quote unquote, excuse me, sorry again, was locking up young players and making a couple big trades. The Chris Sale trade, the Adam Eaton trade was pretty big, getting Lucas Giolito back and Reynaldo Lopez, both of whom are mainstays on this team. Yohan Moncada in the Sale trade. And, it's gone flat. To call it flat is a disrespect to pancakes, lefse, and flatbread everywhere. That's, they're absolutely dreadful right now, and there doesn't appear to be a path out. Probably to some extent, an apology should be issued to Tony La Russa from the nerd crowd, because it turns out he wasn't the only issue, if he was an issue at all. But yeah, you can't help but feel for White Sox fans, even if you don't like them, and I understand if you don't like them. But we'll get a chance to chop it up on Monday with Nick Morosky of Locked On White Sox. We'll talk about what direction they're headed, what direction the Twins are headed, and preview the upcoming set at Comiskey U.S. Cellular Guaranteed Rate. Whatever you want to call it today, I'm okay with it. Esoteric Scooble wants to tell us about the Twins getting very lucky with the 8th inning calls. Yeah, Jerry Lane, for whatever reason, took a hard left in the 8th inning to the point where Matt Quatraro got ejected, justifiably so, the Royals manager. He wasn't very good all night, but I feel like the 8th inning was kind of that turning point, the outlier, just where it really took off. And the biggest thing to note is with how dicey the situation was for Thielbar, that getting that last strikeout prevented him from facing Bobby Witt Jr. with the bases loaded. And Witt had been absolutely fantastic all night long, pounding the baseball, whether it was against Pablo or whoever. And then you would have either had a left on right matchup if you keep Thielbar in, or you go get Jorge Lopez, who was shaky in the 9th. So we could, in theory, maybe think he would have been shaky in the 8th too. Who knows? So yeah, Jerry Lane gets the MVP for the Twins on Friday. It's a good observation by Esoteric Scooble. Jacob Tobin wants to know, on a scale of 1 to 10, how blind was the umpire on Friday night? He said there were some mutually awful calls during the game, especially toward the end. And yeah, I give him a solid 7.5, 8 for sure, because it was pretty brutal. Fried Bryson Beans, interesting name, said, if I was the Twins GM, that's me, not him, what move would I do to get Kirilloff in Minneapolis? Do you sacrifice versatility and send down Castro, or do you make another move? It's hard. We talked through it in the first segment, and I'm not quite sure what the right answer is, because I think your two most movable players in the near term are going to be Willie Castro, and Trevor Larnach. So in theory, do you bring Kirilloff up but keep Larnach up and give him a chance to kind of catch his wheels from spinning? Or do you make the one-for-one swap for the outfielder types? Because here's the deal. If you bring up Kirilloff and keep Larnach up, not only are those two guys butting heads for playing time, but if you get both swinging well, you still have to make a move for Kyle Farmer. You're not DFAing Nick Gordon. I think we can all kind of agree on that, even though he's played obviously quite poorly to start the season. So I think you got to, if you bring up Kirilloff, you got to send out Larnach, and that's a tough pill to swallow, just because of where he's been hitting in the lineup, what he's been doing, commanding the strike zone. Again, the batted ball stuff hasn't quite been there, but do you swallow that pill right now? And then what happens if Kirilloff struggles? Do you go back to Larnach? Do you look kind of flip-floppy if you do that? I don't know what the right answer is. All right, before we transition into the 7th inning stretch, we got to talk a little bit about Ultimate Pro Baseball GM. I love this game. If you are going to download it, go to the App Store or go to probaseballgm.com. If you use the promo code Locked On in the game shop, you get 100% free boost. What? No brainer. It's the coolest game I've played in a long time. I always thought I could be a pretty good GM, maybe not great, but it turns out it's a lot harder than I thought. If you've had the same thought and thought about managing your own franchise, this is the game for you. Download Pro Baseball GM post haste. You can manage every single aspect strategically of a franchise. You got the injuries, finances, coaching staff, all that stuff, the draft, ups and downs of a season, free agency, all that fun stuff. And it's all challenging and in a realistic game world. So it's Ultimate Baseball GM. It's entirely free and playable offline. So you don't even need to be on Wi-Fi. So you can play on the go and play as much or as little as you like. And it's a lot of fun. You're playing against other Locked On MLB hosts. You're playing against all kinds of your friends. You can do that. You can play against your buddies. You don't need Wi-Fi to play. So you can play it on the go. You hear about so many of these mobile games you need to be online for to get updates, and you need to get all these different things. You do not need to have Wi-Fi to play this game. It's a no-brainer. So again, go Locked On Twins listeners, they get 100% free boost to the franchise when they use the promo code Locked On, all caps, one word, in the game store. So make sure you check it out. To download the game, just visit probaseballgm.com. Scan the code or look it up in the app stores. That's probaseballgm.com. Ultimate Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today. Now, I wanted to close things out with an article that I read on Baseball Prospectus at the end of the week from Robert Orr, not to be confused with former NHL star Bobby Orr. But he wrote this great story about how, and the title is How Joey Got His Swagger Back. And, we've seen Joey Gallo off to a very strong start. And, I mean, it's not uncommon to see guys like him smash the baseball for small stretches at a time. But it also, it leads you to wonder, in small samples, what has changed. And for Gallo, the observation that Bobby has made, or Robert has made, I don't want to steal his thunder because it's a good article. You should go check out on baseballprospectus.com. It's on the top right of the screen as of this morning. He breaks down kind of like how Gallo's seeing some more fastballs, which is strange because Gallo is, as you would expect, just slaughtered those. But he has done a really good job handling changeups. So I pulled up some data, and he's faced 25 changeups this year, but no hits on the changeup, right? So you think, oh, maybe it's not that big of a thing. The big thing is his chase rate on changeups. And so there's a GIF in the story about Gallo taking a changeup off the outside edge of the plate from a Nationals pitcher. I think it's Trevor Williams, if I'm not mistaken. But he takes a pitch off the outside corner that leads to a walk. It's a 3-1 pitch, and a free swinging guy like Gallo you'd expect to offer at something like that possibly. It's a good 3-1 approach. It really is. And so what I pulled up in the data was that Gallo has chased on changeups 18.8% of the time. His career rate, his career goes back to 2015, is 32.8%. So he's 14% beneath that. Now, does that stabilize at 25 pitches faced? Almost certainly not. But he struck out twice on changeups. Otherwise, though, the whiff rate is down 33.3% against a career rate of 46.8. He's just swinging at them less often. He's swinging at them 36% of the time against a career rate of 48.5. So the big thing is that I think Gallo is recognizing changeups are something he's just not going to do a lot of damage on. For his career, Gallo has seen over 1,600 changeups. He has 65 hits and 21 homers. To put that into context, though, he has a 182 batting average. Now, this is a guy who's hitting 199, 200, 205 for his career, whatever it is. So it's beneath that. And then a 388 slugging, which for him is very, very low. So the piece, and I have to, again, give it its credit, just kind of lists, and again, in short sample size, there's no denying that they exist, that it exists as a small sample size. He's basically just ignoring changeups and changeup splitters, off-speed stuff, and hunting fastballs. And to this point, it's a good strategy for him. And as Orr notices too, or as he noted, a lot of times those are chase pitches, so they're not really in the strike zone. You'll see a lot of them have zone ratings of like 30, 35, 40%, which means they're out of the zone more often than they're in the zone. So, this is an interesting change. It's something to think about with regards to how Gallo is faring so far this season. Yeah, every single year of his career, he's been 235 or worse against changeups, except 2018 when he hit something crazy, 319 against changeups, 681 slugging, which to me is just it's unconscionable, and it's a one-year outlier. But this is going to be something to watch, because if he can hunt fastballs and get fastballs, there's a very real chance he's a different player than he's showed at different points over the last couple of years. Quick look at Brad, easy for me to say, Brad Keller before we take off here. It's the opposing starting pitcher on Saturday. 20 strikeouts in 25 innings, which is not that great, but 19 walks. So the Twins would do well to be patient this afternoon. He's really cut his fastball usage, a lot of off-speed and breaking stuff, which, as we said, those pitches aren't usually in the zone, could be lending itself to the reason he's walking so many guys. The velocity is fine, 93, 94 with his fastball, but again, he's not throwing it that much. And he's 5 starts in, so some of this data is stabilizing to the sense where we have a feel for what he looks like. Again, he might go out and throw 6 innings with 0 walks and everything kind of changes. But to this point, he's not really a swing and miss guy, and he's walking people. So the Twins should be able to capitalize. Now, with that said, unlike Jordan Lyles from Friday night's game, he's only given up 1 home run so far this season in 25 innings. He's a big ground ball guy. So if the Twins are going to do damage, I don't know that it's going to be hitting the ball out of the ballpark, although that's something that they've been pretty good at of late. So with that said, that's a wrap. We went a little overtime today, but hopefully you enjoyed it. Thanks for hanging out. Make sure you follow at Locked On Twins, at Locked On MIN for Locked On Minnesota, and at Brandon_WARNE, which you can see on the screen right now if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're not, I would recommend it because you get to see my beautiful face. All right. Sorry about that. And again, too, thanks for making us your first listen every day. If you're an everydayer, check back over the weekend for breathless pre- and post-game minutes, as well as a wrap-up show on Monday and a crossover episode with Nick Borowski of Locked On Twins. Make sure you subscribe, like, and give us a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening or watching on. Otherwise, this is Brandon Warren signing off, saying thanks for hanging out with us and have a freaking weekend.